Appreciate your attendance today. We'll call to order this Board of Weber County Commissioners dated the 30th day of May 2017 at 10 a.m. in the morning. In attendance today are Commissioner Gibson, Commissioner Harvey, and Commissioner Ebert. And again, we want to say thank you for coming and spending your morning with us. There are a lot of important items on the agenda. We will start today with a moment of silence. Following the moment of silence, we will have a Pledge of Allegiance led by Holland Wilbanks, and then I will have the thought of the day. Again, just as a reminder, we have had an amazing weekend, a Memorial Weekend, where we celebrate this wonderful country and those who made the ultimate sacrifice. So as we go into a moment of silence, please offer any thoughts or prayers to those individuals and to their families. Thank you very much. Mrs. Wilbanks.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
A quick thought today, as a reminder that the freedoms that we so richly enjoy are not free. They're gained by men and women who sacrifice much. They're gained through men and women who are willing to think beyond what the present community or culture believed. And we should embrace and we should appreciate those sacrifices. My thought today on Memorial Weekend was by Pope John Paul II. It said, "Let us remember the past with gratitude, live the present with enthusiasm, and look to the future with confidence." Those men and women who have sacrificed so much for us to bring us these freedoms and these liberties would want us to appreciate their lives. They would want us to value them, but they would want us then to take that and create more with that, and to live life to its fullest, and to be the next generation of those who strengthen liberties and strengthen freedoms. Thank you. Any thoughts or questions, Commissioners, before we get into consent items? Consent items, number 1, request for approval of ratification of warrants 417063 through 417223, and number 1078 through 1089 in the amount of $1,929,112.44. Request for approval of warrants 417224-417540 and 1090 through 1095 in the amount of $1,551,329.56. Item number 3, request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $272,510.95. Request for approval for the minutes held on March 16th, 2017. Request for approval of ACH payment to U.S. Bank in the amount of $134,195.78 for the purchase card transactions made through the billing cycle ending April 25th, 2017. Number 6, request for approval from the Weber County Fleet Department to surplus vehicles. Number 7, request for approval from the Weber County Sheriff's Office for approval to surplus a tough shed. Number 8, a request from the Ogden Eccles Conference Center for approval to ratify the surplus of 7 banquet carts. Number 9, request to set the date June 27th, 2017 at 10 a.m. for a public hearing to discuss and take public comment on a proposal to amend the following sections of the Weber County Code. Definitions 101-1-7, the Ogden Valley Lighting 108-16, and the Ogden Valley Sign 110-2 to provide clearer standards for outdoor lighting and outdoor lighting devices in the Ogden Valley in order to support dark sky Astrotourism and Dark Sky Accreditation of the North Fork Park and the Ogden Valley General Plan. Item number 10, request for approval of a conditional use request for the Exchange at Wolf Creek Resort, Phase 1 PRUD, located within the approved Wolf Creek Resort Master Development, including an average building height of 33 feet, as conditionally allowed in the CVR-1 zone. Item number 11, request for approval of change order number 5 to add money to the contract by and between Weber County and Staker Parsons for the construction of the 12th Street roadway widening project for work that has already been completed. We're going to hold number 12. Number 13, request for approval of a resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County authorizing the filing of cross appeals for the 2017 centrally assessed properties. Item number 14, request for approval of training reimbursement contracts by and between Weber County and the following: Alexandra Lamarca, Zachary Jones, Rexton Witterbottom, and Jacob Stanger. Item number 15, request for approval of contracts by and between Weber County and the following individuals for independent consultant services at the Weber County Egyptian Theater Kids Act Up: Mark Daniels, Melanie Day, Lindy Lynn Ivy, Caden Thomas, and Janelyn Barber. Thank you, Commissioner Harvey. Number 16, request for approval of contracts by and between Weber County and the following individuals for independent consultant services at the Weber County Ogden Musical Theater: Mari, thank you. I know Mari. Tarbox, Mandy Wood, Derek Myler, Elizabeth Smith, Mickey Larson, Courtney Christensen, Ricky Parkinson, Joanne Hatch, David Reese, Micah Maxon, and Cheryl Jameson. Those are our consent items. Commissioners, do you have any thoughts, questions, or concerns before we go to Mr. Ricky Hatch? Seeing none, Mr. Hatch, would you report?
You bet. This is a summary of our purchase orders and checks that have been written over the past 2 weeks. We issued 35 purchase orders for the amount of $273,000. 42% of that, or $114,000, was for furniture and computer equipment for the dispatch. 13%, or $37,000, was for the transfer station. That was for chipping services as well as composting and fuel. 12%, or $33,000, was for the health department, and that was for vaccines and an inflatable tent. And no, that's not a bouncy house. That's for a hazmat situation. I checked.
Thank you, as I knew you would.
I thought maybe it was for Kay Larson's retirement, and she said, no, that's no bouncy houses there. But that's a good idea. 7%, or $18,000, was for Parks and Rec, and that was for equipment and installation at Observatory Park, our newest park. And then 2 items for 6%, or $15,000 to $16,000. One was for the garage, and that's an open order for tires. And the other was for the jail, and that's for MorphoTrust contract, which deals with their fingerprinting services. As far as checks, last week we wrote 173 checks for $1.9 million. Half of that amount, or $944,000, was for the main library construction. 10%, or $191,000, was the monthly payment to our paramedic service. 9%, or $169,000, was for Weber Human Services. That was our monthly payment. 6%, or $110,000, was payment to our public defenders. And 5%, or $98,000, was a payment to West Haven City for the 2550 South Road construction project. For this week, we wrote 323 checks for $1.6 million. Half of that amount, or $778,000, was medical and dental insurance premiums for county employees. 15%, or $231,000, was a series of RAMP awards, and that was mostly easy grants that were given. And then 5%, or $78,000, was for Weber Housing Authority, and that was for housing and rent payments.
Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Commissioners, seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent items as read.
Second. I have a motion to approve and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thank you very much. We'll move to action items. Number 1, request for approval of a right-of-way contract by and between Weber County and Federal Home Loan Mortgage Corporation for the purchase of a strip of land along 12th Street corridor for the road widening project. Mr. Jared Anderson. Oh, Sean Wilkinson. Sorry, Sean.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is one of our typical contracts for the 12th Street project. And if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer any of those today.
I don't have any questions, commissioners.
I don't either. We're used to seeing these. Looks in order to me. I'll make a motion that we approve the contract.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes. Thank you, Sean. Number 2, approval of a CRS contract for surveying and design services for the 2550 South Road Widening Project. Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you. One of our newest road projects is the 2550 South. Currently, we are only in the property acquisition phase. However, for the future design and survey work, CRS Consultants, the engineering firm, was awarded that bid. They submitted on that RFP and have been awarded that contract. So that is before you for approval this morning.
Okay.
I reviewed it. I'll be happy to make a motion as well, commissioners, that we approve this contract between Weber County and CRS.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the contract between CRS and Weber County for the 2550 South Road Widening Project? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes. Thank you, Mr. Wilkinson.
Thank you.
Item number 3, request for approval of amendment to a contract by and between Weber County and the Utah Department of Corrections clarifying terms relating to inmate funds, PREA, programs/classes, and inmate workers. This
Good morning.
is Stephanie Ebert. Good morning.
I have a contract amendment, as you noted, for the Utah Department of Corrections. This is the contract that we have to house state inmates in our facility. The contract actually expires in 2019. These are just some requirements that have us electronically transfer inmate funds, which we're already doing, to have some requirements for the Prison Rape Elimination Act, which we are already doing, and some reporting on programs and classes for inmate workers. And actually, the requirement in the contract amendment requires less of what we are actually already doing. So we just recommend that this contract be approved, or the amendment to the contract be approved.
Okay.
Is there a savings to this contract? Will there be a savings to this?
No, the current rate that we receive for inmates that we house for the state prison right now is $50 a day. The contract is actually going up to $52 a day starting July 1st, but none of these amendments have anything to do with the rate. So it's just neither a win or a loss.
Thank you.
But I think it's a good point, Commissioner, that we remember and remind ourselves that it's a constant battle down at the legislature every year to get those
Funds.
costs in line. We contract with the state of Utah to house prisoners quite frequently, as do many other county jails. And one of the real challenges we have is getting them to actually pay. I mean, not even what they should pay, not even their share, but even what they agree to, or are mandated to through the legislature, because sometimes, especially with the condition of probation, there's that cute little line that says "as appropriated," and so
Right.
they can say they're going to pay a certain amount, but unless there is money appropriated specifically to fund that, it doesn't happen very often. And so people. I only bring it up because people ask from time to time, what are you doing down at the legislature? And this is one of those things that we constantly have to be on top of our game and working with our lawmakers and making sure that they understand the effect to our county budgets and to local individual taxpayers when they don't pay what they say they're going to pay or what they should pay. And that's a constant battle with the federal government, with the state government, that we have to continue to be aware of and continue to battle from time to time. So where this particular contract is, as Steph said, doesn't have anything to do with that money per se. It's other parts of the contract, but it all fits together. And I think if nothing else, it's a good reminder for the public and for us that this is one of the real challenges we face. This is not the only one that we deal with as far as financing from the state agencies, but it's one of them that's important.
Right, and the contract with the state for the state contract inmates is a little bit better funded, and we don't generally have any problems with collecting payment on this particular contract as we do with the condition of
Condition
probation.
of
inmates.
probation.
I
That's
would
where that
just say,
funny language is.
we spent a tremendous amount of time at the state legislature really working on this, and I'd like to give a shout out to Commissioner Leland Pollock and Commissioner Mark Whitney, who really, from Beaver County, their budget's severely impacted by this particular rate. And we sat in meetings, and they went to the governor's office to really continue to try to push this rate up and make sure it's funded. And another issue that we're continuing to work with our other county commissioners on is this, with JRI, there has been a push from state inmates into our county facilities, and that is probably going to be one of the biggest impacts we have. And how do we find funding now to take on those those county inmates that used to be state inmates? So to Commissioner Gibson's point, I think that we're aware of it, and we work with other commissioners through the Utah Association of Counties to address this and make sure we're remunerated the very best we can, but also looking forward to see the issues that are coming forward from some of the legislation that we've had.
And you mentioned JRI, just to add to that, and the programming. If we do have one program in Weber County for the state inmates, and we house female inmates over at our Kiesel facility on a substance abuse program, a residential substance abuse program that is doing very well. And on top of the $52 a day that we get for those inmates, the state actually sends us up an additional, I believe it's $9.25 a day
Programming.
per inmate for those inmates in the program. So as we look at JRI funding and see if there's some piece of that we can incorporate into our facilities, some of it depends on what our population is and what our bed count is, but some of those programs can be very beneficial for us as well because of the additional dollars that are appropriated for that.
Well, and both those commissioners have asked for our female inmates because there is a higher rate. So again, it's interesting, Commissioner.
Well, when you talk about those individuals, I think, again, to make the point, what would a Beaver County and a Garfield County commissioner, why would they care? Well, they care because it was recognized years ago that for whatever reason, overhead, lots of different reasons, these county facilities can provide a better product at a cheaper rate. And so, for instance, Beaver County went out and built a new jail, and if they could build it a little bit bigger and take some of these prisoners on contract, it would save the state money, especially in the crisis that the state is in right now with their prison system. And so, but they build that with a price in mind, that they're going to receive so much from this contract from the state, and then if that rate doesn't keep up with inflation, I mean, it's already lower, much lower than what the state figures it costs them to house an inmate. If that doesn't work, then they're in big trouble because they have bond payments to make, and their taxpayers are on the hook. And so they are very, every commissioner, every county in the state is very concerned about this issue. And when you talk about the COP, the condition of probation, I think I just want to point out, I think the important part there is to recognize with the JRI, these are prisoners that were being charged with a state crime, and if they're sentenced to a county jail by a judge, then the state is responsible to pay that bill. Okay, if they're a state prisoner but they are sentenced to a county jail. The problem that we're having with JRI now is because it's all good, it's valuable, but we're having these charges charged differently and charged basically if they're not charged as a felony, it's not a state crime, and so that way they end up in our jail and we don't get paid for it. So now we have more people to take care of, more programming dollars going out the door, and that money is not coming in from the state. And so that's one of the real challenges with the JRI reforms that have been going forward that have had a tremendous impact, again, to the local economies and to the local taxpayers. And so these are two different types of funding mechanisms and two different types of prisoners, but it's tremendously important for us to stay on top of these issues and work closely with the governor's office, with the legislature, so that they understand when they see a great idea about justice reinvestment, which is very important and valuable, that they see all the way down the line and they understand exactly what the ramifications are. And I think we could probably have a whole meeting on this. The sheriff could talk for hours if he wanted about the challenges that we're facing with JRI, especially with a quick rollout and kind of, okay, we're going to do this and solve the problems later. It's been tough. Anyway, we'll get to that at another time.
Commissioner Harvey. Okay, I'm open for a motion. Item number 3.
I'll move that we accept the amendment to the contract between Weber County and the Utah Department of Corrections.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to amend the contract. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4, request for approval of an amendment to a contract by and between Weber County and the State of Utah Attorney General's Office, Children's Justice Program for funding support to the Weber County Children's Justice Center. Roberta. Dustin.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
This is a pretty simple amendment on here. Really, all it does is cover the cost of the grant that we discussed when we were planning budgets on the forensic interviewer, where they would pay a 75% portion starting the beginning of the year. We were able to acquire some additional funding for some training for that individual, as well as some one-time funding to help replace a copier that we had downstairs and be able to pick up a laptop. $15,000 of this went towards salary and benefits for the forensic interviewer, of which about $1,800 of that was training for them, and the balance of the $10,000 is for the copier and the computer.
Thank you. Any questions, commissioners? I cannot express the importance of having an individual who understands how to interview children, especially those children that have been involved as victims in these types of crimes. A regular detective just does not have the experience or the opportunity to interview enough to better understand, and so this was extremely important for the Children's Justice Center to be able to implement, so thank you for finding those dollars.
And
Thank
also
you.
for leading. the state.
Yes.
You guys do such an awesome job. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. That's very nice to hear.
Thank you. Any other questions or concerns? If not, I'm open for a motion.
I'll move that we approve the amendment between Weber County and the State of Utah Attorney General's Office.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It passes. Thank you, Roberta.
Thank you.
Item number 5, request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and K&H Election Services to provide election ballot printing, processing, and mailing services. Ryan Cowley. Dun, dun, dun.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Ryan Cowley, the Weber County Elections Director. And what you have before you is the contract. It's a renewal of the previous contract that we had with K&H Printing out of Everett, Washington, and they've done a fantastic job with this. And our goal with this is the state just put out an RFP to purchase new voting equipment. And what we wanted to do is kind of hold serve until we decide what we want to do there. And so we felt like it was important that we keep in place the contract that we've had. And then once we move forward with new voting equipment, then we would go forward and do a full RFP at that point. So
That makes sense. There's some big decisions coming up in the next year or two on elections at a state level, correct?
yes, there are.
Questions, commissioners? Seeing none, I'm open for motion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the contract between Weber County and K&H Election Services.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It passes. Thank you, Mr. Cowley. Item number 6, Weber County Inmate Telephone and Video Visitation Services RFP protest. Brianna Cedarholm. Brianna.
Good morning. I'm going to set this right here. I hope it doesn't go off. Okay. So we did a RFP recently for the inmate telephone and video visitation services out at the jail. This is a contract that they've had for about 10 years already due to some large investments that they made into the equipment and whatnot that was being used. But it's come time to do a new process and see what else is out there with new technology. We went through the process, and the sheriff's office, we advertised the RFP in February. It closed at the end of March. We met together for about 3 days. I met with the sheriff's office committee to discuss the RFPs after they held some demonstrations of the products. Like I said, we met for 3 days. It was an extensive, grueling process because the proposals are extremely technical in nature. And let's see, they ended up selecting Securus Technologies. And according to the way that we typically handle RFPs, Securus was not the number one pick after the original meeting. So the sheriff's office provided a justification. Some things that came up in the evaluation meetings were that when we started analyzing the cost proposal, Securus provided some additional features that weren't explained in their actual technical proposal, and we felt that those items needed to be considered. One of them was the minimum annual guarantee. Another item was the use of a part-time on-site technical support person, and then finally some investigative features that their software provides to the jail staff when they're monitoring phone calls and video visitation. We received a protest from GTL, who was one of the companies that submitted a proposal to this project. They identified 3 areas where they felt needed to be addressed. I will briefly try to, as briefly as possible, explain those and then provide you our response to each section. The first one was that the RFP failed to properly disclose the criteria for awarding a contract. GTL did not, felt that the county did not evaluate the proposals against the criteria that was explained in the RFP, and that the criteria actually used was not disclosed to the proposers. Our not justification, but our response to that is that, as we stated earlier, Securus provided additional information in their cost proposal that was not included in their technical portion of their RFP. The way that purchasing handles the RFP process is we found it's a good practice and it's a solid practice to evaluate technical portions of RFPs separately from the costs so that the evaluators can get a feel for what product meets their needs best, and then we can look at costs and whatnot afterwards. Through that process, because some information was not included in the technical proposal, Securus's scores were knocked down in one section particularly because that information wasn't available beforehand. And they also provided a minimum annual guarantee, which was already stated, that was not explained at all and wouldn't have been because it was part of the cost information. So it wasn't a matter of we didn't disclose the criteria, it was that more information became available later in the process. As is typical for purchasing, we ask that we not usually change scores after evaluating costs because we want to make sure that everyone's looking at the technical, but had this information been provided earlier, it would have been pertinent to the technical scores since it applied directly to the criteria. Number 2 was that the scoring system used was different than that was set forth in the RFP. On this item, there was a change made during the evaluation meetings. There was a line item for the cost of visiting and emails to inmates and families, and another one was other cost options. This was changed because through the cost proposal evaluation, we found that some companies were factoring in other cost options such as investigative tools and part-time and full-time technical support staff already into their commission rates. So in order to evaluate all the commissions equally, we reduced the ones that had it separated so that the commissions were all a level playing field instead of evaluating unreduced commissions to reduced commissions. By doing so, we felt the other cost options now became irrelevant because those were factored in earlier. And so rather than giving everyone a 0 in that section, we took the 2 points from that section and added it to the cost of visiting emails. It was discussed, we did hold a meeting after receiving the protest between a couple of members of the evaluation committee, the clerk auditor, as well as the attorney's office and myself. We found during this discussion that we went back to the original 3 and 2 points instead of a 1 5-point section, and found that the other cost options would be the appropriate place to evaluate the minimum annual guarantee, since it is an other cost option that wasn't factored in originally. So we went back to the 3 for the cost of visiting and emails and 2 points for the other cost options. 2 companies did submit minimum annual guarantees, so both of those companies received scores in those sections according to the ratio of who was the highest for that minimum annual guarantee. Finally, their last objection was that GTL's bid was unfairly scored. They thought, specifically when it came to the commission and to the cost, that they received lower scores in both of those areas that interpreted meant that they didn't respond to those sections. In actuality, those scores are based on mathematical ratios. It's not a subjective number where somebody goes, this cost is worth 2 points, this cost is worth 5 points. We made it a subjective number or an objective number rather than a subjective number. We did find an error in the commission evaluation formula, so we are grateful to GTL for bringing this item to our attention so that we could fix it. The correction did change GTL's inmate telephone commission from 0.042 to a 4.167. So that's an example of the type of change in score that we saw by fixing that formula. That across the board pretty much affected every single proposal that was submitted, just to make sure that that calculation was done correctly. Let's see, they did have another argument that they felt in regards to the demonstrated ability to complete the project within the required time was unfairly scored because they received a 3 instead of a 5 in this section. That is a subjective determination by the evaluation committee. I can tell you that the way that the scores were used and it's calculated on the form is as long as they meet the criteria, they receive a 3, and 5 is for exceeding the need, and 0 is if they don't meet the need at all. So they met the need, they provided a timeline, so they gave them a score of 3. So that's simply how that was scored. GTL's preferred remedy would be to withdraw the intent of award to Securus and in fact begin the entire RFP process. It is my recommendation, along with legals, that we go ahead and move forward with the award as stated to Securus. By changing the cost scores, we found that the ranking actually changed. Securus now is the #1 company. Number 2 is Telmate. 3 is Legacy Inmate Communications, 4 is IC Solutions, and 5 is Global Tellink. So that's my recommendation to you. We do have members, a member from the evaluation committee. We also have Ricky in the attorney's office here if you guys have any questions as far as how that meeting went.
Who was the member on the evaluation
We
committee?
Stephanie.
I appreciate the thought that has gone into this. This is one of the challenges that I think we face all the time as we put out these bids and these proposals. It's tough because we have to always look for the very best deal for the taxpayers. By the same token, you don't want to get sometimes you have to really compare apples to apples.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to think you're getting a Dodge truck and get a
Dodge.
Kia Soul.
It's the Dodge.
Wait, I could do a better one. A John Deere tractor
There we
versus
go.
a Kubota, right?
Sure.
Sorry.
I don't know tractors.
And so we have challenges here. I have been briefed on this. I think it's important that when there's something that's brought to our attention of something that doesn't feel right, that we evaluate that and look at that closely to see if there's something that we can learn, and then that we're willing to back off and change a position if we were wrong. I mean, that's the main thing. I don't want to go forward with something that doesn't seem right just because we made a decision. I'm always willing to turn around and say, you know, we saw this wrong, and we're going to fix it. And we've done that in several cases before. So that's why I asked who was on the evaluation committee. From talking with you and doing some study of this, I feel comfortable with where we're at. But I don't know if Steph or Ricky, any of the attorney staff, have anything that would change my mind on this. I'm comfortable with where we landed unless someone tells me that we're on the wrong path here.
Brian, do we have the protestant here? Do we need to hear from the protestant, or is that just written?
I don't know.
We don't need to hear from them by county ordinance, and I don't even know if they're here today. They were given notice, but I am here on behalf of GTL.
Would you like to come up? Yep. Thank you. Would you just give your name, sir, and who you represent?
Sure. My name is Justin James. I am here on behalf of GTL, and this is my first ever meeting like this, so forgive me if I don't seem like I know what I'm talking about. So, as Mrs. Senderholm stated, we submitted a protest on the award. When the initial scores came out, and I don't know if you gentlemen have had the opportunity to review the scores or not, that Severus was actually the fourth lowest score. Our concern was at that point that there was scoring done, or the choice was made based on information that wasn't provided in the RFP. And I think that that's what Mrs. Selderholm actually said when she got up here, was that Severus disclosed additional information that they thought was worth considering, and they weighted that. The problem that GTL would have, as well as any of the other applicants, would be they were unaware of this extra criteria that the city would be weighing, or the county would be weighing and considering. And so that is why we've asked for them to resubmit the proposal so that we can also provide that similar information. That is one of the issues we have. The second issue is that in response to our protest letter and identifying some of the issues with the scoring, the scores were rescored, and conveniently, Severus was now ranked number 1. And I think, as Mrs. Selderholm had stated, the scoring for cost benefits are what changed the most. And don't ask me to do math on the fly because I am not a mathematician, but my understanding is this is calculated off of a mathematical formula. However, the scoring numbers seem to have changed disproportionately to that formula, if that makes sense. Meaning, while you'd expect scores to change, you would expect them all to change in the same manner. That hasn't been the case in these scores. Some have gone up significantly, for example, Securus, while others have gone down some without really any explanation. The other problem that we have is we've submitted, and this isn't an issue before you guys, but we've submitted a grammar request for an explanation of how these items were scored and how this process was kind of decided, because right now we just think something smells a little bit fishy. We can't say what because we don't have all the information. But that request has been denied. And so for those reasons, we believe that it would be proper and appropriate to have the RFP process, as kind of burdensome and onerous as it is, restarted, and have the criteria that Securus was given favor for identified in the RFP so that everybody has the opportunity to provide that same information. And so that is why we have filed this protest and are asking for a reevaluation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. James? Okay. Commissioners, thoughts?
I'm just going to add really quickly.
I will abstain from this vote for a variety of reasons, or from any questioning or comments, just FYI.
Having gone through do you have anything else? Mr. James?
No, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. Should I go sit down?
Yeah. Feel free to have a seat. There's no specific questions for you, sir.
Hey, you're in good company. We all feel the same way.
We don't stand up for a reason. Of course you can.
Mr. James mentioned that GTL wasn't given the opportunity to submit additional information, as was the other vendor. That I just want to correct that that is not the case. The information was already received by us. It was just in the cost proposal section from Securus rather than in the body of the technical proposal. And so the information was there. We just did not have access to it when we were doing the original scoring on that particular item. And so we didn't need to, we didn't feel we needed to get any additional information from GTL because they had already, we had already gleaned the information from their technical proposal. And I will mention also that the scores that were changed, GTL's score actually went up in the area of the change in that one item as well as Securus. But in the cost proposal, as Brianna mentioned, it was an objective formula, and we did discover that there was an error in her spreadsheet, and so the original cost proposals were not scored accurately. And then when GTL brought it to our attention that their score just didn't look right, we did go back and review that. And I don't know how you can argue a formula when it was actually put in correctly. GTL's score did go up as well. I think theirs went up the most, but it was, I can't explain why the numbers did not go up proportionally to each of the other vendors. But GTL's, I do believe, went up the most in the cost proposal. And so with an objective formula, I'm sure that Brianna would go over that formula with them if they needed her to. But I just wanted to add that information.
What's the length of the duration of this contract?
5 years.
Who's the current provider?
GTL. We've had GTL. Well, we actually contracted with a company called Inmate Telephone Inc. About 10 years ago, and they were actually purchased by GTL several years ago, and so GTL has been our provider since then.
Okay, any further discussion, Commissioner Gibson? No. Okay, well, we're open for a motion at this point to either approve or deny the protestant.
Commissioner, I have a great deal of confidence in our staff and in our attorney's office. I believe that things have been represented fairly. And I'm going to move that we move forward with the contract.
A denial of the protestant.
A denial of the protestant.
I have a motion to deny the protestant. Second. I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes 2 with 1 abstention. The denial. Okay, we're moving to item number 7, a request for approval of an ordinance of Weber County amending the overnight watercraft use ordinance for Pine View Reservoir. Alderman Wilbanks.
Sorry. The cover that was on here fell off earlier. I saw it fall off.
Well, it's finally clear to me that all these people were not here for the election services contract.
There's no cookies afterwards either.
Okay, can you guys
Yes.
hear me good? All
A
right,
little bit of space, yeah.
okay. So this ordinance is just a revision to the existing one that was passed last summer. So as we worked closely with our sheriff's office, we rolled out a nightly anchor permit that was $15 a night, and it rolled out at the end of last summer. So if you wanted to spend the night on Pineview Reservoir, you purchased this nightly permit to be able to do that, and that facilitated our law enforcement to be able to stay out there overnight with the overnight users. As we looked at this and reevaluated it, we realized that there were a number of users that stayed multiple nights. So what this revision to the existing ordinance is an annual, a season pass, essentially, so that you can stay multiple nights without having to purchase and repurchase the nightly pass every night that you want to stay. Do you guys have any questions for me or for Lieutenant Toll?
No. I was just going to ask a question.
Fire away.
As to how you wanted to handle this. I assume that before do we want to talk about both of these ordinances?
I think we want to bifurcate them a little bit, only because this initial one was at the request of many of the boaters to have an annual pass. I do not think there's anyone here that has an issue with an annual pass. And so I think we can work our way through this ordinance, have some questions and thoughts, and then move on to item number 8, where we may have.
It would be beneficial to me to hear public comment before we vote specifically on number 8. And so I'm just wanting to make sure I understand what you're wanting to do as far as procedure. Are you saying then take item number 7, move into item number 8, have the presentation, then have public comment, then come back and vote? Is that your thought?
Yeah, I think we probably take public comment between 7 and 8. Is there anyone in the audience that's here to talk or discuss the anchoring permit annual pass? Fire away.
You probably got to come to the microphone though and state your name, or we'll be trouble.
While he's on his way up, I failed to mention that this is the second reading of this ordinance due to process. So we would be, if passed, the final reading for this ordinance.
State your name, sir.
Yes.
Steve Johnson, Huntsville resident. Just a question on this. So if you get an annual pass, does it reduce the cost of your overnight?
Depends on how often
many
you
of-
use it.
how
If you
often
don't
you
use
use
it
it?
enough, it will
So it
increase
could.
it.
Right.
It
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So,
Do you want the?
no, I don't.
Okay.
That's just enough.
Okay.
Yeah, that's enough. Just the point of it. So the police officers that are out there every night, are they going to get paid less?
I don't believe so. I don't
Then it
think
makes
that-
no sense.
Are the police officers going to get paid less?
Right. If we're reducing the amount that the boaters will have to pay to stay overnight regularly, then we should reduce the officers' wages that are out there. That's logic. So no, I don't think we should reduce it at all.
Okay.
In any way.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll have public comment for item number 8 in between 7 and 8, if that works for everyone, before we make a decision. We want to make sure we get all the public input. Specific to item number 7, which is the overnight water use ordinance amendment. I just want to say what I appreciate is that last year we had actually for a long time we've had some initial issues with overnight usage of the reservoir, and through a process of community involvement, of the Forest Service involvement, of the Sheriff's Office involvement, we came up with our first step in a long process, and this is the continual process of finding the best way we can address the issues specific to overnight usage, and we'll continue that with other steps to make the Pineview an amazing experience for everyone. And I think that's this ongoing part of this process, the annual. And I understand the argument, but I think for us, what we're trying to accomplish is to create a reservoir where everyone can use it, and it's a positive experience for everyone. And I think this is one of the steps we've taken.
Well, and just to add to that, I appreciate that comment because it's got the wheels turning here. But as I think about it, and the way that the number was arrived at, I don't believe that it's going to decrease overall. the amount of resource that will be brought in here. And again, I think we have to look at this as a bigger picture. One of the big points of having this permit is that now everyone on the boat, on the water at night has to have a permit, right? And it wasn't necessarily a huge financial boon. It's a way for us to know, basically for the law enforcement to know who's on the reservoir and have some type of measuring mechanism of numbers, and you get the pass. I mean, it's much easier to track down a problem, right? And say, okay, we can fix this problem because you have the pass. It's probably not paying for itself, for all the law enforcement yet, and that's something that's part of the bigger picture that we need to look at as a whole. But I think that as much as I appreciated that comment, I feel like we're still on sound footing with this particular portion of where we're moving forward, of the bigger plan, the bigger.
Right. And commissioners, just so you guys are aware, this does not eliminate the nightly option. It just adds an option to purchase for the entire season. So now you can choose, if you are not a regular user to stay overnight, you will probably still purchase the nightly option. However, if you frequent the reservoir overnight, you will probably purchase the season option. So you still have both of those options.
The same, just so I understand, and the same comments being made. If you decide at the first of the year you're going to buy an annual pass and you only use it a couple of times or 3 times,
Sure.
then you've made money on the transaction.
Sure.
In which case the officer's pay wouldn't be increased in that option.
Right.
So there would be, there could be an argument made in each side of that.
Sure. And if approved, this would go into effect tomorrow.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and have some public comment. We have some folks that have some interest. Go ahead and step to the microphone.
I just would like a clarification, because I'm not totally familiar with the ordinance, but is there a limitation on how long you can stay on the water? Because this has happened in other places where people take up residence for long periods of time. And if there's not, you have a real issue.
Well, there's nothing right now prohibiting an individual from...
It might want to be addressed
residence
before you finalize this.
Yeah. So
Again.
I neglected to introduce Dave from Forest Service. Dave, would you like to step up here and answer a question? Maybe you can answer that question because it's your body of water.
Thank you.
Just state your name.
So my name is David Ashby. I'm the Recreation Manager for the Ogden Ranger District. So the forest does have a stay limit in place that would apply to someone living on the reservoir.
Okay.
Because it's national forest, it's public property, we have a stay limit of 14 days. So if someone stays beyond 14 days, they're considered taking up residence on the forest, and we have means to ask them to leave.
Thank you, David.
Make sure they register to vote there.
Again, as a reminder, this recreational area is under the authority of the Forest Service. So everything that we do is in conjunction and with permission from the Forest Service. So we operate under their rules. We adopted an ordinance that will allow us to do enforcement. And one of the issues we have with the next item we will get to is the ability to actually enforce some of the things that people are having issues or concerns with. Go ahead and step up. You can just step right up. You can make a line. So we can get into the Forest Service management, but the Forest Service has a management plan that limits the amount of boats on the reservoir at any time. But if we're going to make comments, we have to come up because they have to be by law on the record, and that has to be from an individual we can identify. So you'd have to step to the microphone and give your name.
Dave, you might want to sit a little closer.
Steve Johnson again.
Nice to see you, Steve.
Nice to meet you. First clarification is these officers do an incredible job. I live right on the reservoir, you define this as a recreational area. This recreational area is my next door neighbor, so I have a real interest. I've spent a fair bit of time with these officers in circumstances that you probably wouldn't have wanted to been there. I could tell you about them later.
Is he a problem up there? Oh, he's trying to rectify a problem. Okay. I wasn't sure which side you were on.
You'll know in a minute.
Steve, I'm
Anyway, the logic of the pass being for an extended time now, I brought up a financial issue of it. He remedied or counteracted it with the concept of it doesn't really matter because it doesn't really equate. But the logic that he used as far as tracking, it gives you a tracking device to know who's on there. So I get me a season pass for the whole season. You still don't know if I'm on there. I might be or I might not be. But the daily pass, you know who's on there.
Yeah,
So I see no advantage to the season pass. I see no point to it.
I think, I appreciate that. Lieutenant
That
Toll, I
makes
think,
sense.
has an answer to that.
So when purchasing the season pass, the individual who purchases it will actually be, all the information will be recorded. The pass actually has a number assigned to it. And the way we'll know if they're, well, we're not going to know if they're not on the water, they just won't be there. But if they are on the water, that pass has to be visibly displayed on the boat, and it will have that serial number assigned to the pass. So we will know actually who that number is registered to with the files that we'll have.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
That's what I meant, is that we have a hard time with enforcement when we don't have some kind of a permission to be on the reservoir. So whether it's a day use or a season use, if you have a permission to be there by way of this pass, that you pay a fee, and then that gives our law enforcement tools that they haven't had prior to deal with some of these enforcement issues.
And again, it's not the perfect answer. There probably isn't a perfect answer unless, as a government, we become so restrictive. We're tracking your boat, we're tracking your hours. We have an ordinance that encompasses everything, but I don't think that's the purpose of government. We're trying to come up with a response to an issue that we've had. We've gone through a tremendous amount of community input, both from the Upper Valley and through the Forest Service, and then from the boating community. There may be an individual who takes advantage of the annual pass, but the Forest Service mandate is to provide public lands for public consumption. And so we cannot be so prescriptive that we do not allow the public to access those lands. And so we have to walk a line that allows for public use, but still provides enough enforcement that it becomes a positive experience, and that's what we're trying to accomplish.
Gail Ahlstrom from Huntsville.
Nice to meet you, Gail.
My question was, with this overnight pass, is there some type of proof they have to show that they have a toilet on their boat?
No,
Is it self-contained? Where are they going to go to the bathroom all night and not in the morning? And
yeah. So there's no requirement, but I'm not sure that we, as the county, can make that requirement. Again, we have to work within the rules of the Forest Service. So I don't want to become the potty police. I'm just going to be a little honest with you, and I don't think we want our deputies being the potty police. What we expect is individuals that use the reservoir to use them and be responsible and use the facilities, because there are numerous facilities around the reservoir.
Hi, I'm Carol Raleigh from Huntsville Town. I have a question. Do you monitor how many passes are given out at night?
So all of that will be monitored, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it won't go to an extreme, is what you're saying.
Again,
there's a certain
cap
amount
on the reservoir, yes, ma'am.
at night.
Yes.
At any time.
Is it the same as the day?
It would be.
Wow. You saw it yesterday.
That's really a Forest Service question.
Okay, and then the other question I have, is there a noise ordinance? I can hear people's boats out at 11, 12 o'clock at midnight blaring their music.
So that is that's the enforcement after 10
10
p.m.
p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
Please understand, for those making the comment too, is this, we're working towards moving things forward. We know that there's not, we can continue doing things they did, the way they did them 20 years ago, but that doesn't help the way they are today. And so we are taking steps to move things forward, and we'll continue, this will continue to morph as the years goes on, and we find better ways to do what we're doing. There's some good suggestions that have been made today, and we'll continue doing that, but we need to put teeth in what we've currently got so that we can increase the enforcement.
Hi, I'm MJ Munger. I'm from Huntsville Town too. I just want to know, what's the rationale behind switching to having the annual passes? If we already have the daytime passes, is it just to increase the convenience to the boating community?
Yeah, to a certain extent it is. The boating community uses the reservoir on a fairly common basis. We want to make sure that we provide the ability for them to access it, and it's not cost prohibitive. The boating community, in my opinion, has been very responsive to the issues. There's been some tremendous enforcement also to help that, and I think the boating community wants to be good neighbors. One of the biggest issues we've always had out there is enforcement, and so we're in the process of helping to provide funding for enforcement, but also to change the mentality of individuals that are using the reservoir. And so that is a process that takes a little bit of time.
So are you thinking that by allowing, a carrot or something that's good for the boating community, that it will help them to be better neighbors or more responsive to concerns that live there? Or
you always probably catch more flies, not that the boating community's flies, but you always catch more with sugar and honey than you do with vinegar. And we don't want to vinegar everybody because we want it to be a positive experience. And the boating community is part of our community, and we have an expectation they're going to be good community members, as they do. And again, this really isn't a carrot. It may benefit the county as much as it may anybody else, because you held 12 visits and you only go 6 times. Well, that's extra funds that we then can put into enforcement. So a little bit of marketing strategy going on here, a little bit of business development also.
And I'm sure that you appreciate too that there's a concern I think the boating community is going to share that with the people who live around the reservoir, that the reservoir is beautiful and it will be degraded if it's overcrowded, if it's too noisy, if there's pollution of the water. And those are real concerns, and limiting the number of people that are there overnight seems like a good way to limit the degradation too.
Well, I will tell you that I apologize, that the boating community as a whole is a great community, and they value the experience up there. And so they're working as a community to have, to be good community partners on the reservoir. So I see that happening, and I expect it to continue.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just add to that. I think from what I'm hearing, I'm gathering, and it makes sense to me that it probably is better. I mean, we want less people on that reservoir maybe at night than we would during the day, and I think maybe that's a discussion that we could. I don't know how those caps are set by the Forest Service, and Dave, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm not really asking you a question unless you want to answer.
I'll answer it for him.
I just want maybe it's something that could be discussed if some future time if that's a possibility. That's all.
So what I would ask is a little bit of patience and a little bit of trust. We have been in discussions with the Forest Service about the Pineview Reservoir for over, Holland, 10, 12, a year, over a year, because it's probably 16 months now. We're aware of a majority of the issues. We've taken a tremendous amount of public input. We have spent a tremendous amount of time with the Forest Service, understanding their mandate and understanding how the process is. And if you think getting something changed at a county level is difficult, changing it at a federal level is almost impossible. So what we have are partners of the Forest Service who are finding every way they can to work to help make this a better experience. Specific to the question about management, that management is a plan that is about 20 years old, but to go through a management study takes over a year or longer. And so we are working with the Forest Service to start that process. The use, you can have short-term usage changes, but they only fall into certain categories. And so the amount of boats on the reservoir during the day or the night falls into some of that. But we can't arbitrarily change those. It has to go through an entire process. And whether it's parking, amazing experience on the reservoir that fits within the mandate of the Forest Service. So we can't answer all those because we don't have enough time unless you want to start coming to the meetings. But we are discussing those, and we're trying to find resolution to each of those issues.
And just to reiterate too, we're listening to you folks because we know you're the neighbor to the body of water. And so we're interested in what you have to say, and we're interested in you enjoying where you have to live. And so we're moving in the direction of making sure that the boating community, and we don't want to take advantage of our neighbors as well. So we're listening and doing everything we can to make sure everybody gets along. And this is, I feel it's a step in the right direction that way.
You don't have to raise your hand.
Okay. My name's Ashley Stoddard, and I'm a Huntsville Town resident. I think a good solution would be that if you limit the night passes, that you also, the passes that are given have a barcode on them so that when people come in, they, their barcode's scanned. When they leave, their barcode's scanned. So if they're there over 14 days, you know that they're there over 14 days. And then also, you know, you're saying that the boating community is a responsible community, and I believe that most of them are, but probably not all of them. And that would be a way to monitor that as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah. Pass that along.
My name is Virginia Hernandez-Areza, and please, do I give my address?
You don't have to. You live in Weber County.
I live in Ogden. That's Weber County, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Yes, it is. Excuse my ignorance. Is this meeting solely for the boating community?
No.
That's what I thought.
For the entire community.
And this is what I'm hearing. I have been born and raised in Ogden, have family that lived homes in Eden, Huntsville for years. They're moving out now. I also have friends, we have friends that live in Huntsville. They too know that the reservoir is for everybody. I heard you say many times, it's for the voting community. And the reservoir, I was born, like I said, here in Ogden. We were always, my community, from Ogden, surrounding communities in Weber County, were always up there, still are. It's very difficult for us to understand. I understand where they're coming from because it's the boating community. As I said, the people that live up there, they're not really steeped in boating, but they do use the reservoir. My question here is the overnight pass that's going to be gone, and you're looking at having a, what is it, that one charge fee? What about the people that do go and don't boat, but they're there to enjoy an overnight stay on the reservoir? Now, these are decent people. They're not drunks or whatever. These are good people that have been doing this for years. What do they do when they want to just stay overnight and not just go boating? That's a question. I guess what I'm looking at here and trying to show to you, because I keep hearing it's for the voting community. Well, we vote. It's not just for the Huntsville community voting. Take that into consideration because we vote too. And again, I'm just saying we know a lot of people that live out there in Eden. They're not entrenched with voting, but they do it. So I'm not hearing that part of the community that votes. So please take that into consideration and see what we do we the people that maybe can't even afford a huge amount for that one-time fee and just like to, I don't know what happened here. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay.
Thank you, Virginia.
Thank you.
And the reason that you're hearing voting, because that's what this meeting is about.
Definitely.
Yeah, so when we have something about the swimming community, we just dropped the buoys last week for the new swimming area. We would reference the swimming community in that meeting. When we were talking about pathways and hiking around the reservoir and completing the path around the reservoir,
Yes.
then we will reference the hiking community a tremendous amount. When we are talking about beach, which will be the next agenda item, we will reference the beach community.
Okay.
When we talk about the paddleboard community off Windsurfer Beach and access to that, we will reference that community. Again, when we talk about fishing, we will reference the fishing community. The reason we're referencing the boating community, because specifically this agenda item is specific to the boating community. That's
So
why
I
we
should
reference
not be able to make comments
No,
on
no,
this?
no, I'm just,
I understand what you're saying.
I'm just explaining
And
why
I
we're referencing
understand.
the boating community.
So from here on out, we'll come more to the meetings
Wonderful.
and find out what is really going on so we don't look so ignorant.
You're not-
Thank you
you're
for your
good.
time.
Okay. Any other public comment or any other thoughts?
Brandon?
So just to clarify on the season pass, this does not add boats to the water. And it doesn't actually save them a spot if they have the season pass. There's an actual cap on the water for how many boats are allowed, and they have to pay a day parking area. This is specific to from the hours of 10 p to 6 a. So it's having that pass in order to stay on the water between those hours. So it doesn't add boats, it just simply gives them another option for a season pass, but again, it doesn't guarantee them a spot on that water if the cap on those boats are at the time, completed. And as that water reduces, the number of boats reduce also that we allow.
And again, from the county's perspective, we cannot limit or dictate the amount of boats that are on the reservoir day or night. Okay, that is outlined in the management plan. And we've talked to the Forest Service. We're in discussions about maybe reviewing that management plan and seeing if we can make some suggestions on changes and maybe get that process rolling. So what we can address, we're trying to at this time. And then we're working into the future with the Forest Service on the next perspective for the permitting process, and then a management plan, and then usage will fall in that management plan. Does that sound like that's correct, David? Okay. All right, commissioners, thoughts, questions, concerns? What would you like to do? Second reading of this ordinance.
I'll move that we approve the request for the second reading of this ordinance for the overnight watercraft for the annual pass.
I have a motion to approve the ordinance on second reading. Do I have a
Ordinance,
second?
I'm sorry,
I'll
it's
second.
ordinance 19.
I have a motion to approve ordinance 19. I have a second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
And Chair Hebert?
Aye. It passes. Thank you very much. Item number 8, request for approval of an ordinance of Weber County amending the alcohol beverage ordinance for Pineview and Causey Reservoir. We will have the presentation, and then after the presentation, we will open it up for public comment.
Does that require a motion to do that on the agenda, Brian? Does that require a motion?
Move
I'd
public
like to move public comments between 7 and 8 on the agenda.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Harvey. Okay.
Okay. Over the past year, as was discussed earlier, the county has been meeting with a cross-section of users that recreate up at Pineview and Causey. And that cross-section includes our anglers, our cyclists, our hikers, our boaters, our beach goers, our homeowners, the Division of Wildlife Resources, obviously the Forest Service, and then our law enforcement. And we've discussed better ways to manage and move forward as we've seen the number of users at Pineview and Causey increase year over year over year. And with that increase in users, we've seen a number of incidents that relate directly to safety and I can let Lieutenant Toll speak a little bit more directly to the influence that alcohol has been directly related to some of these safety issues. But I think it's important to know that this has been a process, as we've talked about, and we've studied beaches across the nation and found that over the last 2 decades, the majority of beaches across the United States don't allow alcohol on their beaches anymore. And I think that it's important to understand how we've seen these issues arise here in our own backyard as well. So I'd like to thank the Forest Service for their hard work and their participation in working with us directly with this, and as we walked through this potential change. And then I'd also like to thank the Sheriff's Office for the amount of information that they've been able to support and document as we've moved through this potential ordinance. Would you like to add to?
So just a quick overview of what occurred during the opening weekend, I should say, for Memorial Weekend. We had 16 incidents related to alcohol. During those 16, just to name a few, we had multiple fights. We also had a near drowning. And with that near drowning, the individual was, CPR was performed. He came to, he fought the individual giving him CPR. And then when medical arrived, he actually fought medical. So we're seeing a lot of the issues of alcohol that's consuming the vast majority of our resources. And just to add, deputies last night went around to the beaches and took photos of the amount of garbage that was left there. And there were 89% of the garbage was alcohol-related containers. Having this ordinance passed would greatly reduce the incidents involving alcohol-related issues that consume the vast majority of our time and make Pineview and Causey a safe and more enjoyable place for everyone to visit. If we can prevent people from being intoxicated and make fatal decisions where one life can be saved, it will be worth it. Thanks.
Do you have any specific questions about the ordinance itself that you'd like for us to define?
For the group that's here, we have a lot of interest. Can you just give us
Sure.
kind of a high-level overview of what the ordinance?
The ordinance reads that alcohol would be prohibited in all areas except for designated camping areas, and that is Anderson Cove and Jefferson Point. Jefferson Hunt and Anderson Cove, and on the water itself, and on the marinas. And this ordinance does expand to Causey, so it would prohibit alcohol in the surrounding areas of Causey Reservoir as well.
Okay. Do we have a definition of what on water entails? And the reason I ask that is that was the definition or the verbiage the Forest Service gave us, that of an area where we could not create an ordinance covering and enforce other than those specific to DUI. And so I don't know if we've got to the point, or we're just going to adopt a Forest Service language.
Right. This is similar to how the Forest Service permit will read. And anything on the reservoir will be under state law and state regulations, and they'll enforce to those regulations.
Commissioner, just a clarification, I have the proposed ordinance in front of me.
I didn't know where that was coming from. Like, who's talking?
Apologize. On the water is not actually mentioned in the ordinance. It says the alcohol is prohibited in all areas around Pineview and Causey reservoirs except in designated overnight camping areas and marinas. Okay. So it implies that you could have alcohol in boats on the water because it's not an area around the reservoir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioners, unless you have questions, we'll open it for public meeting or public. Okay, thank you very much. You're welcome to come down. Don't need to raise your hand. We just need you to comment into the microphone, and please remember to state your name. And if you're from Huntsville or Far West or Ogden or Layton, just please let us know. And smile.
Oh, there's a lot to smile about. My name is Steve Weller. I currently live in Pleasant View. I'm a lifelong resident of Weber County. I just want to state up front, I am not a drinker. I never have. My family per se is really not drinkers. But that being said, I've never had a problem with somebody who wants to. We all have a right to do what we want to do, and that's their right to do that. I feel strongly about that. However, when it affects my rights, I have a problem. Let me just briefly tell you, I was at Middle Inlet yesterday. Arrived about 9 o'clock with my family, an extended family, for a day at the lake, day on the beach. Within 30 minutes, there was a disc jockey set up, not 30 feet from me, but on the same slab that I had my picnic table and grill. Within an hour, there was 50 people, and music playing so loud that I'm sure the people in Huntsville heard it. And not only was it loud music, but it dropped the F-bomb about every other word. I went up there at 10 minutes to 12 and asked them if they could please turn that down, that it wasn't appropriate for my family or others who were in that campground, that picnic area that day. I don't need to tell you what I was told. So I picked up my phone and I called Weber County Sheriff's Office dispatch, and I reported it. They gave me all the questions, took my name, where I was at, what was going on. At 10 minutes after 4 yesterday afternoon, that's 4 hours and 20 minutes, officers arrived to hear my problem. Now, if we can't enforce it any better than that, we better go home. And I'm not throwing daggers at the sheriff's office. I don't know where they were. I have no idea. I took up the issue with the camp designate up there, the concessionaire. He told me it wasn't his problem, it was the sheriff's office. I needed to call the sheriff's office. As I was standing there talking to him, one of the disc jockeys showed up and he says, "How's my pal Gary doing?" What does that mean? Is Gary his buddy and it's okay to do that? Or is Gary getting paid under the table to overlook that, look the other way? I can tell you that when the Forest Service arrived and the Division of Natural Resources arrived and the 3 deputies arrived, that music went away. And so did the marijuana, and so did the booze, and so did the underage drinkers. It all went away. My point is if we're going to pass something, we've got to enforce that. And we can't enforce it showing up 4.5 hours later. If somebody would have walked through that camp at noon and made a presence, or if maybe one of the boat police out there on the shore who pulled up twice had docked their boat, heaven forbid, and come up on the shore and just walked around, maybe that would have been avoidable. My point of this is, I never have ever thought that it was right to tell somebody they couldn't enjoy a beer at the lake. But commissioners, today I'm telling you, it's time to stop it. Unfortunately, the people who don't know how to behave themselves are ruining not just Pineview, not just but society itself. But for the protection of my family and those who that I love and care for, I'm in favor of this. I never thought I'd say that, but I am today. Thanks.
Thank you for your time, Steve.
What was his first name again? Steve. Steve. Thank you.
Hey there, gentlemen. My name is Tiana Bykowski. I'm an Eden resident. Actually just moved to Eden about 5 months ago, and I love it up there. It's beautiful.
You only have 30 years until you're considered a resident in the valley.
Dang it. But it's a town of 600. I'm like, come on. We already know everybody. And, I want to thank everybody who's came out to express your voice, and thank you for hearing our voices. It's very important to us. I want to express the enjoyment that I have for our community in Ogden Valley. It's a wonderful area. The lake itself is a beautiful thing that I get to pass on my way to work every morning and on my way home every night. I love it. One of the things that I don't know if I know the Huntsville residents know, but we do a yearly cleanup. It's offered out to the community, and we go out and we actually clean up all the roadways, all the trash that's built up over the winter, and that's something that we take pride in. It's our community. It's our pride, you know? I'm an emergency responder, so to me, I understand and thank the officers that do their job. Thank you very much for that. It's very important to make sure that our community is safe as well. We found a lot of food trash, a lot of tires on the roadway when we do these cleanups, a lot of clothing that we find as well, and there are some, we find alcohol trash there as well. One of the things that I do want to point out is trending. Again, I'm an emergency responder. I know the importance of trending. With the increase of number of populace, you're going to have an increase in incidents. That's what's going to happen. One of the things I do know is you can use facts to support just about anything you need. It's just how it works. If we don't show all the facts and just a small snippet of them, you will only get that small snippet. So one of the questions I did have at the last meeting was, let's know the increase by percentage over the last 5 years and the increase in incident over the last 5 years. If those two are corresponding, we know it's because of populace and not just incidents of alcohol. Enforcement. The gentleman that just came up talked about enforcement. We can't enforce our littering problem, which is a huge problem around the lake. If we can't enforce that littering problem, how are we going to enforce these other safety incidents? And I know greater severity, I understand that. But the small things, if we can't enforce the small things, people think they get away with the greater things as well. Free activities are another thing I'd like to bring up. I'm a military family. We don't make a whole bunch of money. So one of the great things we have is a free lake to enjoy, free trails to enjoy. We can ride around the bike trail. It's wonderful. What I did notice with this ordinance is it kind of targets people that want free activities. If I want to go and enjoy a picnic with my family and bring a bottle of wine, I have to pay to go to Anderson Cove, I believe it was, Anderson Cove, or buy a boat. Because if I have a boat, I can drink on it, as long as I'm not driving, but I can drink on it, or go into the marina. This is a problem. I understand people like to make money off of alcohol. It's a thing that happens. However, for us, as a free event, much like the Harvest Moon Festival, when we do have incidents of alcohol there, it's one of those trade-offs that we have because it's a public event open to the public. I know a lot of people will complain. That's what we do. We're a society of complainers, and we don't come up with options. I would like to present a couple options that we may want to look into. And again, I don't know if you've come up with these, but hey, I wasn't a part of the committee, but I do want to bring them up if we can. Maybe we can try and give a single free beach the opportunity of being an alcohol, beach for alcohol. We close off all the other beaches and leave one alone for people to come if they want to enjoy alcohol. That gives the young man that wants to come out with his family the ability to go to a different beach and not be involved with the ones that may be drinking alcohol. It also gives enforcement, because guess where we're going to put our enforcement officers? Maybe around that beach, because we know there may be more incidents. Kind of narrows it down to the areas that we need specific enforcement measures around. So if we had trash cans, I know as somebody that does understand laws, and I'm not saying specific trash cans all over the beach, which somebody has to go out and clean up. It's another cost for us, correct? And I understand cost versus gain. But if we had a dumpster where people could put all of their litter in, that would be taken out maybe once a week, that would solve a lot of problems. I know as someone that does partake in drinking, when I open a container, I don't want to have that open container in my car. Because if I get pulled over, they could see that as an open container. Maybe one of the reasons why people have left stuff there. I'm not saying it's right, I'm not saying it's good, but if we give them the option of throwing it away there, we could solve that problem. Finally, revising. I see one of our commandments here is continuous improvement, and I think that's fantastic. As we grow, we need to improvise, adapt, and overcome. It's something we have to do. So if we give this free beach a chance, next year we can see, hey, how many incidents were tracked at this beach? Do we really have a problem? Can people actually like the boating community did in the last session, curtail themselves, police themselves. And maybe we can keep it open another year. But at least by giving a single beach a chance, we can see where that goes. And then next year we can bring it up and say, hey, it just wasn't feasible for our community. Cost-wise, it wasn't feasible. Enforcement-wise, it wasn't feasible. But at least we're giving the opportunity for those that enjoy a free activity to have an option to go to at Pine View. These are a couple options I just wanted to put out there. I appreciate you hearing them and hearing the voices of everyone here, both ones that do drink and don't. Thank you very much for your time.
Very much. Just for interests of, go ahead, please come up. Just for interests of everyone having an opportunity to voice their concern or support, can we try to keep comments to right around 2 minutes out of respect for everyone's time? And if we can refrain from duplicating comments, we're writing them down. That would also help allow everyone to get an opportunity to talk. Thank you. Don't forget your name and where you live.
Kristen Johnson, First Street, Huntsville, Utah.
Zero.
Yes. I would like, first of all, one question. What is the season pass? What is the amount of the season pass, the dollar amount of a season pass? $130 or $15 a night. Okay. I grew up boating, lived in Bountiful, grew up boating on Pine View when there wasn't an overnight stay, and we would camp in Anderson Cove or one of the campgrounds around, got off the water, got back on, wasn't a problem. We do live in one of those coves where the boats get together. I'm just saying we have stayed awake listening to the disc jockeys that he listened to yesterday afternoon all night long. But I have to say too, I do appreciate the officers that my husband has taken our canoe out and rowed over to those boats before to have them stop their music at 2 in the morning. And we really do appreciate the officers that help. I have a letter from a gal who couldn't be here. She just wanted to know if I would read it for her. It says, because our family is out of town today, I am writing a letter in support of the ordinances prohibiting alcohol on Pine View Reservoir. Our family witnessed a near tragic event while at a reunion at the beach on Pine View Reservoir. Our boat was anchored about 40 feet from another boat next to the shore. They were drinking heavily with beer cans littered on the beach in front of their boat. Without all 5 adults noticing, a toddler, approximately 18 to 20 months old, toppled over the side of their boat and into the water. My husband and I jumped up, running toward their boat and yelling that their baby had fallen into the water. None of them understood what we were saying because of their drunken state, and they stood there watching us run frantically toward them. Even then, they did not notice their baby was missing from the boat. When we got there, we dove into the water after the baby, pulling her up. She had been submerged the entire time. We worked to get water out of her as she gasped and choked and coughed. Had we not seen her from our place on the beach, that baby would be dead. We were hesitant to hand the child back to the parents because they still were completely drunk and did not react the way normal parents would have if their child had been rescued from drowning. And I'd just like to make a comment there. I am not opposed to people overnight on the water or on the beaches, but alcohol seems to do something to people's judgment. I think a normal family in their boat probably wouldn't have their music up so loud, or on the beach. They're respectful, and so I think the word, I don't know, not intoxicated, we act differently. We proceeded to give them a tongue lashing that normal people would not soon forget, but they probably forgot within 5 minutes. Alcohol and water are a deadly combination. I think alcohol in any motorized vehicle. So I'm concerned when it says alcohol around the outlying area, but we can drink on the water. I have a good friend who was water skiing, and a boat came between him on the back line and his boat, passed through where the rope was, and he is now obviously severely handicapped due to motorized vehicles and drinking. So I think there needs to be something put in there. I think if you're on the beach and in a campground and you can drink and sleep it off and it contains to your little area, I don't have a problem with it. I say amen to Steve who spoke. I don't have a problem with drinking if it doesn't affect me.
Just a reminder of the 2 minutes.
Okay, we have one of the most densely populated lakes in the state, and drunk driving of boats should not be tolerated any more than drunk driving of cars when they leave. They lose all inhibition and all concerns for others around them, that their litter and their rude, with their litter and their rude and dangerous behavior. This is our backyard, and we shouldn't have to clean up their messes. Passing a no alcohol ordinance at Pineview Reservoir is the right thing to do, and we support it 100%. With hope, Chad and Wendy McKay and family. One other comment with the free beaches. We have done that. My kids grew up going to the beach. We don't go to the beaches anymore because of what's there. And if you probably raise the hand of how many town residents visit their beaches, they don't, because they're not safe. And we have had free beaches where the town residents know, and as people get to know them and they bring the alcohol down, we've had to cut down rope swing trees because alcohol and everything has come in, and the town residents don't go there anymore. So the alcohol is a problem, and I appreciate the help from the officers and those that everyone that's trying to help clean it up. Thank you.
Just a reminder, the clock's right there. You can watch the clock.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Alan Wheelwright. I live in Eden, Utah.
And look, he's got 9. Oh, sorry, I thought you got a few extra seconds.
You trying to cut me off, Commissioner?
No, I was trying to give you 9 extra.
I think this is a great idea in theory. I would go back to, a lot of laws are good in theory, but in practice are hard to enforce, or they really don't accomplish what we want them to. I really think something should be written into this, that at a year we should reevaluate it. We should look at the trash. Maybe the trash will turn from beer cans to soda pop cans. Will the incidence of disorderly conduct really go down? We need some sort of metric written into this so that we can quantify it over time and really say, is this working or is this not working? Or if not, it's just another, waste of law enforcement time that will be subjectively enforced whenever anyone feels like it. In theory, also, I'm in favor of parking, charging people. We've seen how the free beaches have been used and abused, but I think that's a subject for another day. So thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Ashley Stoddard, Huntsville resident. First of all, I want to thank you guys for trying to find a solution to cut back on the trash and make these beaches a safer place. But I do not agree with this ordinance. I am a drinker. I'm 42 years old, and I'm a responsible drinker. I do not drink and drive, and I work very hard, and sometimes I would like to enjoy a glass of wine or a beer. I am of legal drinking age, so being a citizen of the United States of America, that is my right? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I was also raised in a very different climate than Utah. I come from Northern California, and actually mine's country, where a lot of people drink responsibly, and they have beautiful places to visit, and they're also responsible with their trash, because there's recycling there. There's programs that are set up to make people successful with their trash. So that's one thing that I think that we lack around Pineview. It wasn't until recently that we have larger dumpsters which is a great thing. And they're not dumped often enough, because after the weekend, they're overflowing, there's trash all over the place. Like, we need to be more responsible about the trash. And then another thing that I'm thinking is to be more solution-oriented and maybe get some volunteer groups behind picking up the trash. And then also behind picking up the trash, maybe part of the responsibility is getting in touch with the law enforcement, which I guess we don't have enough of, is kind of what I'm hearing from everybody around the lake, that they can get in touch with you. And if there is underage drinking, if there's some type of an incident, then you have more eyes on the problems and maybe faster solution. So anyways, I don't feel like I feel like this is fear-based and it's not solution-based, and I think that it needs to be looked at just a little bit harder.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bill White. I'm a Huntsville town resident. I'm also on the town council, and I've also have been serving for the past 16 months on what we call the Pine View Committee, which is the committee that came up with the overnight boating ordinance and has been pushing this idea of the no alcohol on the beaches. I don't want to bore you with a whole bunch of horror stories. I live directly adjacent to the lake about the craziness that goes on with the alcohol, but I just wanted to make the point that 3 of the 5 members of the Huntsville Town Council and Mayor are alcohol drinkers, including myself, are responsible alcohol drinkers, and the majority of the people who served on the Pine View Committee are also alcohol drinkers. But we are all 100% united in our support of this no alcohol policy on the beaches, because all of us are active users of the reservoir and have seen so many incidents of craziness and dangerous activity that occurs because people don't drink responsibly. And I wish that everybody could enjoy having a drink at sunset on the beach at Pine View and would act responsibly, but that's not what's happening. What's happening is we're having huge raging parties of drunkenness because people have figured out this is a place that you can go to have a massive party and you can get away with doing whatever you want. And it's having a real detrimental effect on the quality of the experience at Pine View Reservoir. All of us are united in this, who have studied this for more than a year. The town council, drinkers and non-drinkers, are completely unified, and most of the people in the town of Huntsville are completely unified on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. White. Anyone 6'4" or taller, you need to scooch down a little bit because we're not getting you on the camera.
Good morning, Commissioners. If I
You're
slur,
just right, by the way. You're
Thane
perfect.
Fisher.
You're framed perfectly.
Okay, my name's Thane Fisher. I'm a Huntsville resident. Actually live right by the Spring Creek parking facility, and I'm also on the Pine View Reservoir Committee and have been there for the last 16 months, and I would echo a lot of what Bill has said. However, one of the things that I think is being left out here is that, and I do drink. I enjoy a glass of wine from time to time and feel that I can drink responsibly, but we're not finding that on the beaches around Huntsville. It's not unusual. Many of the beaches, this is a best practice that was described throughout all the research that we did for over 16 months. So there are other communities throughout the United States that have gone through these same issues. And I think it was brought up, and when we have enough volume that comes up to any area, you have more issues, and that is true. And these are the best practices that have stepped up and served these other beaches around the U.S. very, very well. So this is a best practice that we would like to adopt at the Pine View Reservoir. The other thing is that after listening to the enforcement and the sheriffs, we do not have the adequate enforcement. So we're trying to do what we can with what we have. And if our law enforcement is spending the majority of their time managing alcohol-related incidents, then if we can take or at least curb some of those alcohol-related incidents, we feel that the enforcement can go to other areas that will be better suited. And I think it's important that we do listen to our enforcement and our sheriff's office in reference to this. One of the things we do here is a lot about the free. Unfortunately, our reservoir isn't free. There is a cost to operate our reservoir. There's a cost for the waste, there's a cost for the upkeep, there's a cost for the maintenance, and we really feel that if we can actually reduce the activity from alcohol-related incidents and apply those costs and resources to some that aren't, it'll better serve the purpose of of the community. And last but not least, I think one of the things that as the Pine View community was, what is the highest and best use? What's the best experience that we can have for everybody? And we believe that this will help accomplish the best experience for everybody. So I would hope that you would pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Hello, my name is Janet Wampler, and I am an Eden resident. I am also not in favor of this new regulation. I believe our issue is actually more of an enforcement issue. I do not believe we need to add additional laws and regulations when we have ones already in place. Littering is illegal. Public intoxication is illegal. Disturbing the peace is illegal. Drunk and disorderly conduct. These are all things that we already know need to be regulated. They are on the books. They need to be enforced. Again, many people like to go down there at sunset, have a beer or a glass of wine, something to that effect, and then they leave. They pack in, they pack out. To take these types of things away from law-abiding citizens, rather than enforcing the laws against the people that are currently disobeying the laws, I think is not necessary. So I'd like to see enforcement. I'd also like to see a more regular emptying of the garbage cans. I'm someone who uses the reservoir at sunset often during the week. So I'm a Tuesday, Thursday night sunset paddleboarder. I often find a lot of garbage right around the garbage cans and dumpsters. They're actually packed up. People have bagged up their garbage, brought it to the dumpster, found that the dumpster was full, and left it there by the side of it. Why they don't pack it out and take it with them, I don't know, but that's what they do. They actually took the time to bag it up and brought it over, and then it's overflowing out and animals get into it and things like that. If we can look at the timing and the frequency of the emptying of the receptacles, I think that would go a long way as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Randy Lloyd of Huntsville. I live about 100 yards, or less than 100 yards from the water. I said ocean because I grew up there. But in Southern California, there are issues with alcohol on the beaches, and in many places, as in parks also, it's outlawed. I am a drinker, a daily drinker. I'm also a 35-year veteran of police work. I understand the nature of this. I'm not opposed to them banning alcohol on the beaches, because I walk these beaches almost daily around, 365 days a year. I'm out there on the beaches walking my dog. Me and my wife have picked up bags of garbage. The vast majority of it is alcohol related. For me, I don't have a problem with people and their rights. I don't want to violate anybody's rights, but don't infringe upon my rights. And that's what's happening. We do hear the loud noise. We do pick up the trash. We hear the fights, and it just goes on and on. But I think the only solution, quite frankly, is more enforcement. I know it costs money, and if you have to, raise taxes or, make fees, to get around the lake, et cetera, which is what I understand you're doing, then do it. But we need more enforcement. And it can't be just driving, or responding to calls. We need to actually get down and dirty on the beaches. Again, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
It would be like 30 seconds.
Ladies before gentlemen, how's that?
Okay. All right. Just an idea. My family owns a gallery in Carmel, California. It is a public beach that is very clean. You can have fires there. You can have alcohol there. You can have dogs there on that beach. But somehow they've implemented something within that community that people have pride to keep that beach clean and safe. And so maybe look at some of those places, Lake Tahoe. Glass is not allowed on those beaches, but just about everything else is. You'll see 35 dogs running in the ocean, and there's baggies to get your dog crap and clean up whatever, down there. So maybe look at some of those places and somehow instill pride within the community for people to be responsible and then enforce the people that are irresponsible. That's all.
Thank you. Did your leg fall asleep, or you got a bad wheel?
I broke it skiing this year. Corey Lair from Eden. One thing I follow most the beliefs. The enforcement's always been lacking up there. Life jackets, whatever, all the different regulations. To add this, it's still not going to be enforced. You can enforce it probably on Middle Inlet and Cemetery Point, the big beaches, but you can't enforce no alcohol around every single mile of shoreline beach in that area. And people might move there however you do it, but it's not going to be enforceable just like the other things going on. Got to step up enforcement, which it comes from taxes or dollars or more fees or whatever happens, but that's truly the root of it. And some of us get persecuted because of bad behavior of others, but that's the climate we live in today. So I understand you're wanting to do this, but I definitely disagree with it.
Thank you. And we definitely don't want you to think we're persecuting anyone. There's no persecution here.
I'm Elaine White, and I'm a Huntsville town resident. And I just want to say that I really respect the fact that there are people who want to have something free that they can do, and they want to be able to enjoy their alcohol, and I appreciate that. But I think the larger picture, which is families being able to enjoy it, and the fact that it does get abused, I think it's important to make sure that it is safe for families. I have a 14-year-old son. He and his friends, they love to go down to the beach. But a lot of times he'll say, I'm going to the beach, and he'll come home 10 minutes later. I'm like, what happened? And he said, well, there was like 10 teenagers down there, and they had a keg of beer, and we just didn't feel comfortable. So I just feel like it's making it not a safe place and a good place for families to enjoy it. And I know there are responsible drinkers, and I feel bad that they are not going to be able to have their glass of wine at sunset and so forth. But I think the bigger picture is something that's important. Additionally, my son and I and my daughter have gone down to kind of adopted a little 200-yard area of beach. And in the springtime, we'll go down there to clean it up, and we'll get 2 or 3 full bags of trash. And 75 to 80% of it is beer cans and beer bottles. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Good luck on being last. Is Jamie going to say? I've been through a couple of your few minutes.
Thank you, commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Holland, Lieutenant. I wanted you to mention that all those meetings you'd had were in the Huntsville Town Hall. I have a letter today from Mayor Truitt. He is taking a well-earned vacation. My name is Doug Allen, by the way. I'm the oldest living resident in the valley. Been there my whole life. And let me just read this letter from Mayor Truitt. It's dated yesterday.